Welcome to my channel. Have you ever seen a painting that speaks without words? Or met someone who turned pain into power? Today we are talking about Frida Kahlo, one of the most famous artists in the world. But Frida was more than just a painter. She was a symbol of strength, love, and freedom. Her life was full of struggles, but also full of color, courage, and creativity. Stay with me to learn her powerful story in simple English, step by step. You don't want to miss this. Chapter 1. The Early Life of Frida, 1907 to 1925. Frida Kahlo was born on July 6, 1907, in a small, colorful town called Coyoacán in Mexico City. Her full name was Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo y Calderón. Her house was blue. Today, people call it the Blue House, and it is now a museum. Frida's father was from Germany, and her mother was Mexican. So, Frida grew up with two cultures, European and Mexican. This mix of cultures would later appear in her paintings, clothes, and identity. As a child, Frida was curious, smart, and different. She liked to read books, draw pictures, and play with her sisters. But when she was only 6 years old, something sad happened. She got a disease called polio. This disease made her right leg thin and weak. Other children made fun of her, but Frida did not give up. She started to wear long skirts to cover her leg. She learned to walk again. She even became strong enough to do sports like boxing and swimming. She always tried to be strong, even when her body was in pain. Frida went to a good school when she was older. It was one of the best schools in Mexico. She wanted to become a doctor. She loved science and learning about the human body. At that time, very few girls went to schools like this. Frida was one of only 35 girls out of 2,000 students. She was brave and confident. Many people say that she had a strong personality, even as a teenager. But Frida's dream of becoming a doctor ended suddenly. One day in 1925, something terrible happened. Frida was riding a bus with her boyfriend when the bus had a horrible accident. A streetcar hit the bus, and it broke into many pieces. A metal bar went through Frida's body. She broke her spine, her leg, her ribs, and more. She was only 18 years old. Frida had to stay in bed for many months. She had many surgeries and felt a lot of pain. She could not move much. It was a very dark and sad time in her life. But something amazing happened during this time. Her father gave her a mirror, and her mother gave her paints and brushes. They put the mirror on the ceiling above her bed so she could see her face. Frida started to paint herself. She made her first self-portrait, a painting of her own face. This was the beginning of something very important. Frida started to paint more and more. She said, "I paint myself because I am so often alone, and because I am the subject I know best." Painting helped her express her pain, her thoughts, and her emotions. She turned her pain into art. She used colors, symbols, and details to tell stories without words. Many of her early paintings were simple, but very powerful. Her face in the paintings looked strong, but also sad. She often painted herself with tears, animals, flowers, and traditional Mexican clothes. Even though her body was broken, her mind and spirit were full of life. People around her noticed her talent. Her friends and family were surprised. She was not just painting for fun. She was creating something special. Frida was slowly becoming an artist. By the end of this chapter of her life, Frida had learned something very deep. Life can change at any moment. Pain can come without warning. But in that pain, we can still find meaning. Frida did not become a doctor of medicine. Instead, she became a doctor of emotions, using her art to understand human feelings. Her bed became her first studio. Her mirror became her teacher, and her pain became her paint. This part of her life shows us how strong she was, even when everything seemed lost. Frida Kahlo was already starting to become more than just a person. She was becoming a symbol, a voice for people who feel pain, who feel different, and who want to be heard. And this is just the beginning. In the next chapter, we will learn about Frida's love story, her travels, and how her identity became a part of her art. So keep watching. You don't want to miss the next part of her amazing journey. Chapter 2: Love, Diego, and Identity, 1925 to 1939. After her accident, Frida Kahlo continued to paint more and more. Her small room in the Blue House became her world. But even though she was often in pain, she still wanted to live a full life. She wanted to meet people, share her art, and be part of something bigger. That's when she decided to show her paintings to a famous Mexican artist named Diego Rivera. Diego was already well known. He painted large wall paintings called murals that showed the life of workers and the history of Mexico. He believed that art should be for the people, not just for rich families or museums. When Frida showed him her paintings, Diego was very impressed. He said she had something special, a strong voice and a unique style. He encouraged her to keep painting. Soon, Frida and Diego became close. They fell in love, and in 1929, they got married. Frida was 22 years old, and Diego was 43. People called them the elephant and the dove because Diego was big and heavy, and Frida was small and delicate. Their marriage was full of love, but also full of problems. Diego had many affairs with other women, and Frida was deeply hurt. Still, she also had her own relationships. Their love was complicated, passionate, and sometimes painful, just like her art. Frida and Diego traveled to many places, including the United States. They lived in cities like San Francisco, Detroit, and New York City. At first, Frida was excited. She wore beautiful Mexican clothes, long dresses with bright colors, flowers in her hair, and big jewelry. She wanted to show the world the beauty of Mexico. People in the U.S. were curious about her. They had never seen a woman like her before. She became a kind of icon, a person who stood out in every room. But as time passed, Frida started to feel lonely and out of place in America. She missed the culture, the colors, the smells, and the music of Mexico. She saw how rich people in the U.S. lived in big houses while poor people suffered. This made her feel angry and sad. She once said, "I am not happy in the U.S. I am a fish out of water." During this time, Frida painted some powerful works. One of them is called Henry Ford Hospital. It shows her lying on a hospital bed, bleeding and crying. Around her are symbols of pain, like a fetus, a snail, and a flower. This painting was about her deep sadness after losing a baby. Frida could not have children because of her accident. This was a great sorrow in her life, and she showed it clearly in her art. Another painting from this time is My Dress Hangs There. It shows her Mexican dress hanging in the middle of a cold American city. This painting is about how she felt, like she was present, but also missing. She was there in body, but not in spirit. She did not like the modern mechanical life in the U.S. She wanted to return to her roots. One thing that made Frida special was her strong identity. She was proud to be Mexican. She wore clothes from the Tehuana women, an indigenous group from southern Mexico. These clothes were full of meaning. They represented strength, beauty, and history. Frida also wore bold makeup, her famous unibrow, and flowers in her hair. She wanted to look like a piece of art. Her image became just as famous as her paintings. Her art also began to change. She mixed dreams and reality. She used symbols from Mexican culture, like monkeys, skeletons, hearts, and blood. Her paintings were like visual poems. They were full of emotion, pain, and deep personal stories. She painted herself many times because, as she said, "I paint myself because I am what I know best." Even though Frida was in Diego's shadow for many years, her art started to get attention. People noticed how honest and emotional her paintings were. She was not trying to be perfect or beautiful. She was trying to be real. And that made her art very powerful. By the late 1930s, Frida's marriage with Diego was falling apart. They both had affairs and fought often. In 1939, they got divorced. Frida was heartbroken, but she continued painting. That same year, she created one of her most famous works, The Two Fridas. It shows two versions of herself sitting side by side. One is dressed in European clothes, the other in Mexican dress. One heart is open and bleeding. The other is strong and full. It is a painting about identity, love, and pain. This chapter of Frida's life shows us how love and heartbreak shaped her. It also shows how she used her art to express feelings that were too deep for words. She was not afraid to show her truth, even when it hurt. In the next chapter, we will explore how Frida's health became worse, but her art became even stronger. We will also see how she used her voice for politics and justice, and how she became a symbol for many people. Stay with me. Frida's story is just getting stronger. Chapter 3: Pain, Politics, and Powerful Art. 1939 to 1945. Frida Kahlo was now a woman who had suffered great pain, both in her body and in her heart. After her divorce from Diego Rivera in 1939, she felt lost and alone. But instead of giving up, she picked up her brushes and began to paint more than ever before. Her art became even more emotional, even more honest, and even more powerful. That same year, Frida painted one of her greatest masterpieces, The Two Fridas. This painting shows two versions of Frida sitting side by side. One is wearing a white European dress, and the other wears a colorful Mexican outfit. The Frida in white has a broken heart and is bleeding. The other Frida holds a small portrait of Diego. The two hearts are connected by a blood vein. This painting tells the story of her broken love, her pain, and her search for identity. It became one of her most famous works. But even though she was hurting, something surprising happened. Diego came back into her life. They started to talk again, and they still had feelings for each other. In 1940, just 1 year after the divorce, Frida and Diego got married again. Yes, again. Their second marriage was not perfect, but they seemed to understand each other in a deep way. They were two artists, two strong personalities, and their love was never simple. During this time, Frida's health became worse. The injuries from her bus accident never healed fully. She had many surgeries, and often she had to wear special braces on her back. She spent a lot of time in the hospital. She also suffered from chronic pain, which means pain that never goes away. Some days it was even hard for her to sit or walk. But Frida did not stop painting. In fact, her paintings became even more powerful. She painted how she felt on the inside. One painting called The Broken Column shows her standing with her chest open, a cracked column in place of her spine, and nails stuck all over her body. Tears fall from her eyes. This painting is not just about her physical pain. It is about emotional pain, about feeling broken but still standing. Around this time, Frida also became more involved in politics. She had always believed in justice, equality, and the rights of poor people. She joined the Communist Party in Mexico, a group that wanted to fight for workers and against injustice. Frida believed that art should not only be beautiful, it should say something important. She wanted her paintings to speak for people who had no voice. Frida met many important people in the world of art and politics. One of them was Leon Trotsky, a Russian leader who came to live in Mexico after escaping danger in his own country. Trotsky and his wife stayed in Frida's Blue House for some time. Frida and Trotsky even had a short romantic relationship. But more than that, they shared ideas about politics and freedom. As her health got worse, Frida's art got more respected. Her paintings were shown in more exhibitions, first in New York, then in Paris. Some people in Europe began to call her a surrealist, which means an artist who paints dreamlike or strange images. But Frida did not agree. She said, "I never paint dreams or nightmares. I paint my own reality." Even though her body was in pain, Frida's mind and heart were full of fire. She continued to paint her feelings, her culture, her pain, her love, and her politics. Her art became a mirror of her soul. Each painting told a story about her body, her country, her heartbreak, and her strength. In 1944, she wrote in her diary, "I am broken, but I am happy to be alive as long as I can paint." These words show how deep her connection to art was. Painting was not just a job. It was her way to survive, her way to keep going. During these years, Frida painted some of her most famous works like Without Hope, Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird, and Tree of Hope, Keep Firm. These paintings show her deep connection to her Mexican roots, her body, and her emotions. They are full of color, symbols, and powerful stories. Even though she smiled in many photos, inside she carried a lot of pain, But she turned that pain into pictures. She made the world see beauty inside sadness. Her life became a lesson, not just in art, but in courage. As we move into the final chapter of Frida's life, we will see how, even in her last years, she did something truly amazing. She had her first solo art show in Mexico, and her work began to inspire more and more people. Frida Kahlo was no longer just Diego Rivera's wife. She had become a legend of her own. Chapter 4: The Final Years and Legacy. 1945 to 1954 and beyond. By the mid-1940s, Frida Kahlo was becoming more and more famous as an artist. People were finally seeing her not just as Diego Rivera's wife, but as a powerful artist in her own right. Her paintings were unique, emotional, and full of meaning. But while her fame was growing, her health was getting worse. Frida's body had suffered so much over the years. The pain from her bus accident never left her. She had more than 30 surgeries in her life. In the last years, she spent long periods in hospitals. Her spine was very damaged. She had trouble walking, and she often used a wheelchair. In 1953, doctors had to cut off her right leg below the knee because of an infection. This was one of the most painful events in her life. In her diary, she wrote, "Feet, what do I need you for when I have wings to fly?" Even with all this pain, Frida did not stop painting. In fact, she painted until her final days. Her will was strong. She used art to keep living, to keep fighting. And then, something very special happened. In 1953, Frida was given her first solo exhibition in Mexico. It was a big moment in her life. She had always wanted her art to be shown and loved in her own country. But Frida was too sick to walk or stand. Most people thought she would not attend the show, but Frida had other plans. On the day of the opening, an ambulance brought her to the gallery. She was carried in on a hospital bed. The bed was placed in the middle of the room, and there she lay, surrounded by her paintings, laughing, talking, and celebrating. It was a powerful moment. Everyone was shocked and moved. That night, Frida showed the world her true strength. She was in pain, but she still came, because art was her life. 1 year later, in 1954, Frida Kahlo passed away. She was only 47 years old. Her death was a huge loss to the art world, but her story was far from over. In the years after her death, Frida's fame began to grow even more. At first, many people still focused on Diego Rivera. But slowly, the world began to see the depth of Frida's work. Her art spoke to women, to people in pain, to people who felt different or alone. She became a symbol of strength and freedom. Today, Frida Kahlo is one of the most famous artists in history. Her face is known all over the world, on t-shirts, posters, books, and murals. But more than that, her paintings live on. People visit her blue house in Coyoacán, which is now a museum. There, they can see where she lived, painted, and loved. Frida's art is studied in schools. She has inspired movies, books, and music. She has become a global icon of individuality, resilience, and self-expression. People admire how she turned her pain into beauty, how she stayed true to herself, and how she was never afraid to show her truth. Frida showed the world that you don't have to be perfect to be great. You don't need a strong body to have a strong voice. You don't need to hide your pain. You can use it to create something beautiful. That is the power of her story. And maybe this is why people still love her today. Because Frida Kahlo reminds us that even in our darkest times, we can still shine. We can still create. We can still be ourselves. If Frida Kahlo's story inspired you even a little, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I share more stories like this to help you learn English through real people, real history, and real emotion. Comment below and tell me, what part of Frida's life touched your heart the most? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. And always remember, just like Frida, your voice matters. Your story matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.